For as long as anyone could remember, peace had ruled the galaxy. The Galactic Accord, an agreement signed by every major alien race, had stood for 3,000 years. It was a time of prosperity, where conflicts were rare and cooperation between species was the key to a better future. Trade flourished, knowledge was shared, and wars were nothing but stories from the past. But, as history has shown, even the longest periods of peace are vulnerable to change, and it was the Tridian Empire that was about to shake the foundations of this calm. The Tridians were one of the galaxy's most advanced and powerful civilizations, with a long history of conquering and dominating lesser species. But for 3 millennia, they had kept their ambitions in check. Their rulers had signed the Galactic Accord, and for the most part, they respected it. They focused on their own technology, growing their empire quietly and without much attention. That was, until now. One morning, without warning, the Tridian Emperor declared to the galaxy that the peace was over. The Tridians had become too powerful, they claimed, and now it was time for the galaxy to submit to their will. The Emperor's speech echoed through every communication channel, every transmission, every news outlet across the galaxy. "We are the Tridians," the Emperor's voice boomed, "and we demand your submission. Humanity, in particular, has grown too strong. You have defied the natural order for too long. It is time for your reckoning." The shockwaves of the declaration were felt throughout the galaxy. Alien species that had coexisted for thousands of years were now faced with the possibility of war. The Tridians were not known for mercy, and many feared the worst. But among all the races, one stood out as particularly unbothered: Earth. Humanity had long been seen as the underdog in the galaxy. Humans were small in number compared to the great empires of the galaxy, and their technology, though impressive, was considered to be nowhere near as advanced as that of the Tridians or other civilizations. Yet, when news of the Tridian Declaration reached Earth, the response was not one of fear, but of something far more unexpected: laughter. At first, it was just a few isolated chuckles. People laughed at the audacity of the Tridians. Surely, this was a joke. Surely, the Emperor had made a mistake. But as the day wore on, the laughter spread. Television hosts and social media influencers began mocking the Tridian Emperor's speech. Memes flooded the internet, poking fun at the idea of an empire with such grandiose claims. "War with humanity. Ha!" One popular meme read, "Did the Tridians forget that we survived their last attempt at domination, back when they were still figuring out how to use fire?" Soon, the entire world was laughing. Governments and military leaders, usually serious and calculating, found themselves shaking their heads at the sheer absurdity of it all. How could a species as ancient as the Tridians, who had spent 3,000 years hiding their power, think they could intimidate humanity now? On the international stage, humanity's leaders made it clear that they would not bow to the Tridians. "We will not kneel," said one human ambassador. "We will meet them with humor, intelligence, and, if necessary, our own strength. We're not afraid." In the Galactic Council, representatives of the other species watched with disbelief. For thousands of years, they had seen humanity as an amusing, but harmless, species. Now, Earth's leaders were openly laughing at a powerful empire. It was unprecedented, and yet, strangely, it worked. The Tridians, who were used to having everyone fear them, didn't know how to respond. Do they not understand the gravity of this situation? The Tridian ambassador asked the council in frustration. "We are not playing games. We are declaring war." But the humans just smiled and shrugged. "Sure, you are," one human leader replied. "And while you're doing that, we'll be over here cracking jokes and watching your fleet try to make it past our defense systems." The situation was tense, but there was an undeniable air of confidence among humans. They were no longer the underdogs. They were the ones who had something that the Tridians could never understand: resilience and humor. While the galaxy wondered what would happen next, one thing was clear: humanity was not scared. If anything, They were ready to turn the tables on their would-be invaders. The Tridians had started a war, but they hadn't realized they were playing a game they didn't understand. And humans, well, they were about to show them that the galaxy's greatest weapon wasn't in its technology or strength, but in its ability to laugh in the face of adversity. When the news of the Tridian Empire's declaration spread, the galaxy braced itself for a storm. The Tridians had long been feared as ruthless conquerors. Their fleets were unmatched, their technology was years ahead of almost every civilization, and their empire stretched across hundreds of star systems. For any species, including humans, a declaration of war from such a mighty power would have been terrifying. But to everyone's surprise, humanity's response was not one of fear, but one of laughter. News outlets, social media, and even government officials were all strangely amused by the idea of the Tridians attempting to take on Earth. On Earth, there were no cries of panic or worry. Instead, humans were cracking jokes, making memes, and laughing in the face of the impossible. The Tridian Empire's official message to the galaxy had been grand and serious, declaring humanity's defiance an offense against the order of the universe. The message had ended with a chilling warning. The time for games is over. We will bring the galaxy to its knees, starting with Earth. But Earth didn't respond with fear. Instead, humans flooded the airwaves with humorous takes on the situation. Television hosts in every country laughed and joked about the idea of the Tridians trying to invade a planet that had survived asteroid impacts, world wars, and even the rise and fall of countless empires. The world's comedians got to work, writing jokes about the Tridians' grandiose declarations. "Did you hear about the Tridians?" One famous comedian said on live TV. "They say they're going to teach humanity a lesson." Yeah, I guess that's what you call it when you're 3,000 years behind in tech and have no sense of humor. The internet, as always, played a huge part in spreading this lighthearted rebellion. Memes began to circulate at lightning speed. One of the most popular showed a Tridian warship with the words, "Is this the part where you beg for mercy?" Below it, beneath, a human response was captioned, "Sorry, we don't beg. We're too busy laughing." Meanwhile, Earth's military leaders, who might have expected to be seen as the serious players in this situation, found themselves joining in on the fun. The military strategist of the United Nations, General Rain, made a public announcement declaring, "Let them come. We'll greet them with open arms," and a good laugh. On the streets of major cities across Earth, citizens held laugh-ins, where groups of people gathered just to laugh. Some wore T-shirts with slogans like, "Bring it, Tridians," or "The only thing we fear is running out of snacks." It was an unusual display of unity and confidence in the face of an overwhelming threat. But the response wasn't just limited to Earth's public. Even in the highest levels of power, human leaders maintained the same attitude. At the United Nations, representatives from every nation gathered to discuss what to do next. But the meeting quickly turned into a session of jokes and laughter. When asked about the Tridians' war threat, one representative responded, "I've faced more pressure when deciding where to eat lunch with my family." And yet, beneath all the humor, something important was happening. The message humans were sending to the galaxy wasn't just about laughter. It was about something deeper. It was about their refusal to be intimidated. The galaxy's most powerful empire, with its advanced technology and fleets of warships, had underestimated the strength of human spirit. They had thought that humanity would cower in fear like so many before them. But they were wrong. The Tridians, who had spent centuries conquering and intimidating other civilizations, had never encountered a species like humanity. The other races in the galaxy had always respected the Tridians' power, submitting to their will. But humans? They weren't afraid. They were far too confident in their own resilience. As Earth's response spread across the galaxy, the other species began to take notice. Some were unsure how to feel. They had always viewed humanity as a relatively small, unremarkable species. But the more they saw humanity laugh in the face of the Tridian threat, the more they began to wonder, Could this small, seemingly insignificant species really stand up to the mighty Tridians? At the Galactic Council, representatives from different worlds whispered among themselves. Some were curious about humanity's strange reaction. Others were afraid. "Why are they laughing?" asked one Zorgian diplomat, an alien with 6 eyes and a sharp beak. "Have they lost their minds?" "I don't think they have," another council member replied, studying the human response carefully. "Maybe they know something we don't." Meanwhile, the Tridians, watching from their own high command, grew increasingly frustrated. "How can they laugh? We've declared war." The Tridian emperor shouted. His officers tried to explain that the human reaction was an insult to their power. But the more the Tridians tried to assert their dominance, the more humans laughed. And so, as the tension between the two sides grew, the question on everyone's mind was this: would the Tridians learn to fear humanity's unexpected weapon, their ability to laugh and stand tall in the face of danger? Or would this be the beginning of a war the galaxy would never forget? The Tridian Empire had made their intentions clear. After years of maintaining an uneasy peace with the other galactic civilizations, they finally broke their silence. The galaxy, once at ease, was now on edge. The Tridians, confident in their strength and resources, made their first move. They would strike Earth and force humanity to kneel. But humanity, far from terrified, continued to laugh and joke about the situation. On Earth, the mood remained as lighthearted as ever. Citizens held rallies, hosted live streams, and made even more memes about the so-called invasion. Television shows had segments dedicated to poking fun at the Tridian threats. One famous actor even released a music video titled "Not Afraid of Tridians," where he humorously danced in front of digital images of Tridian warships. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Earth's military was quietly preparing. No one doubted that the Tridians would follow through with their attack. They were, after all, the most advanced empire the galaxy had ever seen. Their fleets could tear through entire star systems without breaking a sweat. But humanity's leaders had been working on something important for a long time. They had never believed that the peace would last forever, and they had been quietly preparing for this very moment. The Tridians began their invasion with the force of a galaxy-shaking storm. Their fleet, a vast collection of warships and heavily armed transports, moved toward Earth. The Empire's ships gleamed like dark giants in the void of space, with their deadly weapons ready to launch. They had calculated that humanity would be crushed quickly, their defenses too weak to stop the mighty Tridian assault. But when the Tridian fleet arrived at Earth's borders, they found something unexpected. Earth's outer defense systems, which had been dormant for centuries, suddenly activated. These systems were not just ordinary weapons. They were state-of-the-art technologies built with the knowledge and foresight that humanity had gathered over years of research and preparation. The Tridians had no idea what they were walking into. As soon as the first Tridian ship entered Earth's orbit, it was met with a barrage of energy blasts from a hidden orbital platform. The Tridians, caught off guard, scrambled to retaliate. But Earth's systems, designed to be unpredictable and nearly impossible to hack, held the upper hand. Waves of electromagnetic pulses disabled some of the Tridian fleet's communications, while automated defense drones swarmed the invaders. The Tridian fleet, so confident in their strength, quickly found themselves on the defensive. Ships that had been sent to overwhelm Earth were now retreating in disarray, unable to match the speed and precision of humanity's defense systems. Back on Earth, humans watched in awe as their own technology held the Tridians at bay. The broadcasts of the attack were filled with excitement. There was no panic, no terror, just a wave of excitement that humanity's preparations were finally paying off. People cheered as Earth's defense forces shot down Tridian missiles and disabled attack ships with ease. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy saw a race other than the Tridians fight back, and not just with brute force, but with cleverness, skill, and adaptability. The Tridians had underestimated humanity in a way that no one else had. "What do we do now?" a Tridian officer asked, staring at the monitors in disbelief. "We've never faced this kind of resistance before. We fight back," the Tridian commander replied with determination. But even as he spoke, he could see the reality of their situation. Their ships were being picked off one by one, and their strategies were failing. The human defense systems seemed to anticipate their every move, countering with incredible precision. They had been expecting the Tridians' tactics long before the first shot was fired. Back on Earth, military leaders were cautiously optimistic. General Rain, who had been one of the masterminds behind Earth's defense systems, stood in front of the monitors with a focused expression. "This is just the beginning," she said. "We've got them on the ropes. We'll need to stay sharp, but we've shown them that we're not just a species to laugh at." The human response wasn't just about technology, it was about strategy. Humanity had taken time to study the Tridians' weaknesses. They knew that the Tridian fleet, while powerful, had one major flaw. It relied too heavily on rigid, predictable tactics. Humanity had learned to think outside the box. Their defenses weren't built to simply block incoming attacks. They were designed to confuse, disrupt, and overwhelm. The Tridians, once so confident, now found themselves in a foreign and terrifying situation. For once, they were the ones scrambling to adjust. They had never faced an enemy that fought with humor, creativity, and a deep sense of resilience. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The other alien species were stunned by the unexpected turn of events. The Tridians had been the undisputed champions of space warfare. Now, the species they had dismissed as weak and insignificant was standing up to them. Some began to question whether the Tridians' empire was as invincible as they once thought. As the Tridian fleet retreated, Earth's leaders gathered to discuss the next steps. The invasion hadn't been fully stopped, but the first phase had been a resounding success. Humanity had sent a message loud and clear. They were not to be underestimated. "You wanted a war," General Rain said, her voice steady and unwavering. "You'll get one, but we won't fight on your terms." And so, the stage was set. The Tridian Empire, once certain of its victory, now faced an entirely new kind of war, one in which humanity's laughter, resilience, and unexpected strength had already proven to be the most powerful weapons of all. After the unexpected setback in their first assault, the Tridian Empire's leadership was furious. They had never been humiliated like this. For thousands of years, they had dominated the galaxy, crushing civilizations without hesitation. But now, one small planet, Earth, had dared to stand against them. The humiliation was almost unbearable. The Tridian Emperor paced back and forth in the command center of the Imperial flagship, a massive vessel that looked like a floating city. His officers stood at attention, their faces grave. The Tridian Empire had been preparing for this war for centuries, and now, the humans had disrupted everything. "How did we fail?" the Emperor demanded. "How did a species so primitive, so insignificant, manage to halt our advance? Explain yourselves." The officers shuffled nervously, but it was clear that they had no immediate answers. They had underestimated humanity in ways they could not have imagined. The humans had responded to their first strike with a resilience that shook the Tridians to their core. The technology they had relied on for centuries was not enough to overwhelm Earth's defenses. "We will not make the same mistake again," the Emperor finally declared, his voice low and filled with anger. "Prepare for a second attack, but this time we will not rely on brute force alone. We will strike at their weaknesses, at their hearts. We will break their will to fight." On Earth, life had returned to its usual rhythm. While the military continued to monitor the situation, the general public was still amused by the idea of the Tridians launching another attack. The memes had only increased, with many joking about how Earth was winning the war with nothing more than a few good laughs and an overabundance of snacks. However, General Rain and the Earth leadership knew that the Tridians would not give up so easily. They had proven themselves to be a dangerous and persistent enemy. Earth had won the first round, but there was still much to be done. "We've seen their tactics," General Rain said during a military briefing. "The Tridians are going to try something different this time. We need to be prepared for their next move." As the military worked tirelessly to update their strategies, humanity remained focused on its mission to protect Earth from this unexpected invader. But something unexpected was happening as well. People around the world, despite the threat, were growing more united. The jokes and memes, while lighthearted, had become symbols of strength, showing that humanity could face adversity with humor and courage. On the other side, the Tridians were assembling their fleet for a second wave of attacks. This time, they weren't just bringing more warships, they were bringing something much more dangerous: their secret weapon. A new type of energy weapon, capable of piercing through the most advanced shields, was being deployed. The Tridians had been perfecting this weapon in secret for years, and they believed it would finally give them the upper hand. As the Tridian fleet neared Earth's outer defenses once again, they felt more confident. This time, they would not underestimate humanity's strength. This time, they would strike with all their might and shatter Earth's resistance once and for all. But what the Tridians didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this very moment. Earth's scientists, who had studied the Tridians' technology extensively, had discovered a flaw in their new weapon. The Tridian energy weapon, while powerful, relied on a specific energy frequency to work. If that frequency could be disrupted, the weapon would become useless. "We've got one shot at this," General Rain said, looking at the gathered commanders. "We need to find a way to block that weapon before they can use it. If we can't, Earth's defenses will fall." In secret laboratories deep underground, Earth's top engineers and scientists worked together to develop a countermeasure. They created a device that would interfere with the Tridian weapon's energy frequency. It was risky, and they didn't know if it would work, but it was their only hope. As the Tridian fleet entered Earth's orbit once again, their massive warships loomed in the sky, casting long shadows over the planet. The humans, as they always did, continued to laugh and make jokes in the face of the overwhelming threat. The city streets were filled with people making light of the situation, sharing videos of their war preparations, which mostly consisted of stocking up on popcorn and putting up funny signs. But for General Rain and her team, this was no laughing matter. Earth's fate depended on their ability to use the new countermeasure in time. As the Tridians launched their first attack, Earth's defense systems activated, and the battle began once more. The Tridian warships fired their deadly energy beams, but just as they did, a powerful electromagnetic pulse surged from Earth's orbit. The energy beams from the Tridian ships scattered and lost their power, just as Earth's scientists had predicted. The secret weapon was neutralized, and the Tridian fleet's most powerful tool was rendered useless. In the command center of the Tridian fleet, the officers were stunned. Their secret weapon, the one they believed would ensure victory, had failed. What just happened?" the officer asked, unable to comprehend the situation. "It's impossible," the commander muttered, his face pale. "They've adapted, again." But humanity was not done yet. With the Tridians' weapon neutralized, Earth's fleet launched a counteroffensive. Using their advanced technology and surprising ingenuity, humanity's ships moved swiftly through the battle, targeting key parts of the Tridian fleet. The tables had turned once again. As the Tridian fleet began to falter, their commanders grew desperate. It was clear that humanity was not the easy target they had assumed. The humans had proven that they could not only defend themselves but could strike back in ways no one had expected. On Earth, the people watched in amazement as their military scored victory after victory. There was no panic, no fear, just a quiet confidence that humanity could stand against even the greatest of threats. The Tridian Empire had been humbled. Their most powerful weapon had failed, and their fleets were now retreating under the relentless pressure from Earth's defenses. The humiliation they had suffered was unbearable. The thought of being beaten by a species they had considered primitive seemed impossible, but it was happening. The Tridians were losing, and they had no idea how to stop it. In the heart of the Tridian command center, the atmosphere was tense. The Emperor, once full of arrogance and confidence, now sat in silence, his mind racing. His empire, vast and powerful, had never faced an enemy like humanity. They had underestimated them in every possible way. How could we have been so wrong? The Emperor muttered, his voice laced with frustration. This should not be happening. Your Majesty, one of the advisors spoke cautiously. We still have forces we can send to Earth. We have not lost the war yet. But the Emperor shook his head. It's not about numbers anymore. It's about strategy. Earth is different from any world we've ever encountered. They are unpredictable, adaptable. They fight with something we didn't expect. The Tridians had long prided themselves on their sheer power, their ability to crush any opposition with overwhelming force. They never considered that a weaker, smaller species might outthink them, outmaneuver them, and make them pay for their arrogance. As Earth's defense systems continued to hold strong, humanity's leadership took a moment to regroup. General Rain stood before a holographic map of the solar system, her brow furrowed in concentration. The Tridian fleet, though retreating, had not yet given up. They were still a dangerous opponent, and the war was far from over. We've won the battle, but the war is still ahead of us, she said firmly. The Tridians will regroup, and they'll come back stronger. We can't afford to relax. We need to push forward. The news of humanity's victories spread across the globe. People watched in awe as Earth's forces stood strong against the Tridians. There were no celebrations, no signs of victory yet. The people of Earth knew the danger wasn't over. But one thing was certain. Humanity had proven itself to be a force to be reckoned with. Even as the Tridian fleet retreated, they were not giving up. The next phase of the war would be even more challenging. But Earth's leaders had a plan. They knew they had to stay one step ahead. The Tridians would come back, but this time, humanity would be ready. The human military began to deploy new strategies and technologies, including advanced countermeasures that would prevent the Tridians from using their devastating weapons again. They were prepared for a long, drawn-out conflict. The war was no longer a battle of sheer strength. It was a war of wits, tactics, and innovation. Back in the Tridian fleet, things were not looking good. The retreating ships were damaged, their crew exhausted. The empire was falling apart. It wasn't just the military losses that stung. The Tridian government itself was beginning to fracture. There were whispers of revolt, of factions forming within the empire, all questioning the leadership that had led them to this point of failure. Your Majesty, we cannot afford to keep fighting a losing battle, one of the generals said, his voice filled with uncertainty. Our fleet is shattered. We have no chance of defeating Earth. Perhaps we should consider peace. The Emperor stared at the general, his expression cold. You suggest surrender, after all we have worked for? The general nodded. We have lost. Earth has shown us that brute force is not enough. Maybe it's time to change our approach. But the Emperor's pride would not allow him to give in. We will fight on. We will not be beaten by a lesser species. The galaxy will remember us as the victors. But even as he spoke those words, deep down, the Emperor knew that the Tridian Empire was losing its grip. The once mighty empire was crumbling under the weight of its own arrogance. Back on Earth, General Rain and her team had already anticipated this. They knew the Tridians wouldn't give up easily, but they also understood the fragility of their enemy. The Tridian Empire had relied too heavily on their military power and hadn't accounted for humanity's ability to adapt. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now the balance was tipping in Earth's favor. But even with all of Earth's advantages, General Rain knew that a complete victory would take time. The war was far from over, but humanity had made it clear that they were not just defending their planet. They were fighting for their survival, for their future. As the war continued, humanity's spirit only grew stronger. The Tridian Empire, once thought unbeatable, was showing signs of collapse. The galaxy watched in awe as the human race stood firm, proving that even in the face of the greatest threats, they would never give up. The Tridian Empire was crumbling. The leaders who had once ruled over the galaxy with an iron fist now found themselves struggling to maintain control. Their armies were scattered, their fleets in disarray. The might of their empire had been shattered by a species they had once dismissed as weak and unworthy of notice: humanity. But despite their loss, the Tridians were not ready to surrender. The Emperor, his pride wounded, gathered what remained of his forces. He was determined to launch one final assault, to show the galaxy that the Tridian Empire would not be broken by a mere human race. He knew the situation was desperate, but he had no other choice. If the Tridians were to survive, they had to defeat Earth. "We will strike with everything we have left," the Emperor declared in a grim tone, his voice echoing throughout the command room. "We will show them the power of the Tridian Empire. This is not just a battle for survival. It's a fight for our place in the galaxy." Back on Earth, General Rain and her team were fully aware that the Tridians were preparing for one last push. The news of their retreat had been followed by the quiet realization that they were not yet finished. The final phase of the war had begun. "This is it," General Rain said, addressing the military leadership. "The Tridians won't back down. We need to be ready for their next move. This is going to be their last chance to conquer us." The human forces had regrouped, strengthened by their earlier victories. But even with the confidence that came from having successfully defended Earth, there was no room for complacency. The Tridians were still dangerous. The war wasn't over yet. As the Tridian fleet made its way toward Earth for the final time, Earth's defense systems were upgraded and ready. New technologies were implemented, designed to counter every one of the Tridian Empire's weapons. Human ingenuity had once again turned the tide in their favor. "The Tridians think they can overwhelm us with sheer numbers," General Rain said during a briefing. "But what they don't realize is that we've learned everything about their technology. We know how they think, and we've already devised a strategy to outsmart them." At the same time, public morale on Earth was at an all-time high. The human race had faced down the Tridians twice and had come out victorious. They were no longer just defending their planet. They were fighting for something greater, the future of their species. Earth was unified, and every person had a role to play. From scientists to soldiers to civilians, everyone had joined the effort. The war had transformed humanity in ways that no one had expected. The human spirit was stronger than ever. The Tridian fleet approached, its massive ships looming in the sky. The Emperor had sent his best commanders to lead the assault, determined to break Earth's defenses once and for all. But as they entered Earth's orbit, they found something different than before. The human fleet was waiting for them. The battle began almost immediately. Tridian warships launched their powerful energy beams, but the new countermeasures on Earth's ships were effective. The energy blasts scattered harmlessly in space, unable to pierce Earth's defenses. The Tridian commanders were baffled. They had relied on this weapon to win, but now they saw their efforts thwarted again and again. General Rain's voice echoed through the communication systems, giving orders as the battle raged on. "Hold the line. Keep pushing them back. We know their weaknesses. Let's use them." Human ships darted through the battlefield with precision, targeting the weakest points in the Tridian fleet. The Tridians, shocked by the speed and accuracy of the human counterattack, began to lose their grip on the situation. The Emperor, once so confident in his victory, watched in disbelief as his forces faltered. Back on Earth, people cheered as they saw the battle unfold on their screens. Humanity had risen to the challenge and was once again showing its strength. The memes and jokes that had filled the internet for months now took on a new meaning. The humans weren't just laughing, they were winning. But despite the human victories, the Tridians refused to back down. They sent wave after wave of ships, hoping that sheer force would eventually break through. But with every attack, Earth's defenses held firm, and humanity's military continued to push them back. The Tridian Emperor watched helplessly from his flagship, His fleet was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. His last hope was slipping through his fingers. "You were right," one of the Emperor's advisors said, his voice defeated. "We underestimated them. They've shown us that it's not enough to have power. It's about adaptability. It's about resilience." The Emperor said nothing. He simply stared out into the vastness of space, where his empire was falling apart. The Tridian Empire had been a symbol of dominance for thousands of years, but now it was clear that they could not win. Back on Earth, General Rain gave the final order. "Push forward. We're ending this now." In a final, coordinated attack, Earth's fleet launched a full-scale assault on the remaining Tridian ships. One by one, the Tridian vessels were taken down. The war, which had seemed so impossible just a short time ago, was finally coming to an end. The Tridians had lost. The Emperor, once a powerful and feared leader, sat in silence as the last of his fleet was destroyed. His empire was no more. It had all come to this: defeat at the hands of a species they had never taken seriously. And yet, despite the overwhelming odds, humanity had proven them wrong. The final blow had been struck. The Tridian Empire, once a proud and mighty force in the galaxy, had been defeated. Earth's military, armed with human ingenuity and the will to survive, had triumphed against all odds. The remnants of the Tridian fleet limped back into the farthest reaches of space, broken and shattered, while Earth's people celebrated their hard-won peace. For the first time in centuries, the Emperor of the Tridians sat alone. His empire was gone, his fleet destroyed. He had led his people into a war they could not win, all for the sake of pride. Now there was no one left to answer to, no one left to conquer. The Emperor had lost everything. As the news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy, other species watched in awe. The human race had done what no one thought possible. They had defeated a civilization that had dominated the stars for millennia. The galaxy had never seen a species like humanity, and the lessons of this war would be remembered for generations to come. Back on Earth, the people gathered in the streets to celebrate their victory. There were no grand parades, no extravagant ceremonies. The war had been long and exhausting, and everyone knew the cost of the battle. But there was also a sense of unity, of triumph over adversity. Humanity had faced the greatest challenge in its history and emerged victorious. General Rain stood at the head of a large crowd, her eyes scanning the sea of faces in front of her. She could feel the weight of the moment. They had won, yes, but it had not been easy. There had been losses, sacrifices, but in the end, the human race had proven that nothing could break their spirit. "We did it," General Rain said, her voice strong and clear. "We fought not just for our survival, but for the future of our children. We showed the galaxy that no matter how powerful an enemy may be, humanity will always stand tall." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices rising in a unified roar. People hugged, laughed, and cried. It was a celebration not just of victory, but of humanity's resilience. Meanwhile, on the Tridian homeworld, the Emperor sat in his throne room, his face a mask of defeat. His advisors had all abandoned him, leaving him to confront the reality of his failure alone. The once mighty empire was no more, and there would be no recovery from this loss. The Emperor had made a fatal mistake by underestimating humanity, and now there was no turning back. He had thought the war would be easy. He had believed that the Tridians could crush Earth in an instant, but he had underestimated the resourcefulness of the human race. They had turned the tables, outsmarting the Tridians at every turn. And now, the Emperor was left to face the consequences of his actions. In the quiet aftermath of the war, Earth's leaders began to rebuild. The military forces had already begun to demobilize, and the people were slowly returning to their normal lives. But there was a newfound respect for what they had accomplished. Humanity had faced an enemy like no other and had proven its strength, its adaptability, and its unwavering resolve. The war had changed Earth. It had united the people in ways that no one could have predicted. Old rivalries were set aside, and new alliances were formed. The human race had learned to work together, to pool their resources and their ideas in a way that had never been done before. And as Earth looked to the future, the lessons of this war would not be forgotten. Humanity had shown that no matter the threat, they would always rise to meet it. They would never back down, never surrender. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy now knew it. The Tridians, once the most powerful empire in the galaxy, were no more. Their ships lay in ruins, their cities abandoned. The emperor was gone, his empire reduced to ashes. And the lesson was clear. No empire, no matter how powerful, could stand against the will of a united and determined people. On Earth, the victory was bittersweet. The war had left its scars. Many lives had been lost, and the costs were high. But in the end, humanity had proven its worth. The galaxy would never again see Earth as a weak, insignificant planet. The humans had shown that they were capable of more than anyone could have imagined. And as the stars above Earth glittered in the night sky, there was a sense of peace. The war was over, humanity had survived, and they would go on to write their own future, one that would be built on the lessons of this hard-fought victory. In the end, it was clear that Earth had not just won a war. They had changed the galaxy forever.